गमी सबको हो सकती है और हम बहुत अकेलापन फील करते हैं जब ऐसे होते हैं, लेकिन हम छोटी छोटी चीज़ें कर सकते हैं जो कनेक्शन बना के बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट होता है। हम कभी किसी के साथ रुक के बात कर सकते हैं, देख सकते हैं हमारे नेबर क्या कर रहा है, जहाँ हम आगता क्या है बस कैटल लगा लें चाय बनाने लिए। पाँव जितनी छोटी छोटी चीज़ें हम करें, एक्चुअली हमें बहुत गर्माइश के साथ ये फील करते हैं। गुड ग्रीफ ट्रस्ट हम बहुत खुश होंगे अगर आप आते ये गुरमैश नेशनल ग्रीफ अवेयरनेस वीक में स्प्रेड करें। एक मोमबत्ती लगाने से 6 PM ऑन 8 दिसंबर को अपनी सपोर्ट दिखाने लिए जरा गमी अकेली कभी गुजारनी नहीं चाहिए।
So, welcome everybody. My name is Linda Vagistras and I'm Chief Executive and Founder of the Good Grief Trust. And for those of you who don't know, just very briefly, I lost my partner Graham 7 years ago to cancer and found it very difficult to be signposted to tailored support that would really help me. So we now have over 850 support services and charities and links and helplines under our umbrella. It's a website for the bereaved, as well as the health professionals, GPs, hospital trusts, community services, to access and to signpost those people in need of help and hope from day one. So you're most welcome. Please look us up if you don't know the work that we do. And the National Grief Awareness Week campaign we launched 3 years ago. So this is our third Christmas campaign, December campaign, to bring people together and to raise awareness of the impact of grief and loss on a national platform. So I want to just firstly whiz through, we've got a packed agenda, but I want to say firstly a huge welcome to our guest Hannah Ingram Moore. Obviously from Hannah's put together the Captain Tom Foundation after very sadly losing her dad last year. So huge welcome to Hannah, who will be speaking in a moment. We also have some absolutely amazing guests. So Christine Flack, most welcome. Christine, I'm sure you know, very sadly lost her daughter Caroline last year. And Christine will be speaking about her experience of grief later on. We have Connell Reid. Connell Reid is our guest from the Metropolitan Police, who very sadly lost his daughter Thea last year. We also have our ambassador, Jules Lewis, who is lead nurse for End of Life and Bereavement at Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust, who will be speaking about her experience about supporting bereaved families through her trust. We've got Hilary Barker and Nicole Bowles, who are based up in Scotland. Nicole sadly lost a baby last year, and Hilary lost her husband, and both trying to combat the loneliness and isolation that can be felt, particularly in those remote places up in Scotland. We've got Mike Pollard, who very sadly lost his babies last year, and is the founder of Kent Sands United, which is a brilliant organisation linked with Sands United charity that bring bereaved fathers together to support them through football matches, which is brilliant. We have Charmaine George, our amazing volunteer who's based down in Cornwall, who recently won the Who Cares Wins Awards, if anybody saw the Channel 4 programme, for her work as volunteer for our pop-up cafes. So welcome, everybody. We also have our trustees. We've got Sean Duddy, we have Mark Baxter, we have Helen Churchill, and we have, I'm not sure if actually any of our other trustees are on board at the moment, but we also have my PA, where are we, Paula, who is also taking notes. So welcome everybody. We're absolutely delighted to see everybody. But first of all, let me introduce Hannah. Hannah, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I've muted everybody, but please do unmute if you want to obviously join the conversation. You can always put your hand up at any time for those of you who know how Zoom works. But Hannah, we've invited you today to obviously talk about your experience of losing your father. And as you said, you've been grieving with the world, which I'm sure has been incredibly challenging. But thank you so much for coming together and supporting this national campaign for December. We really appreciate your support. So welcome.
Thank you. And Shall I carry it? Shall I take the floor for a few minutes?
Yes, please. Yeah, you've got 10 minutes. I mean, you know, you're most welcome to chat for 10 minutes.
I'll try not to bore you to tears, but I think, thank you for inviting me here. It is honestly an honour to be amongst so many of you who have gone through incredible loss yourselves, and you're brave enough to be here listening, talking. I think it's extraordinary. I think for me, the story with my father started, in fact, with another significant loss. My father married for the second time when he was in his late 40s, and he married the love of his life. I mean, she was the love of his life. They just were like yin and yang, and had the most. I was so lucky as a child to have parents who truly lived a wonderful life together. But she sadly died quite young. I was quite a young woman. It was just as I was having my children, and it left him as a widower. And you know, he was a good Yorkshireman, and could be fairly dry and fairly witty, as you all saw, and said, look, you know, I married someone 16 years my junior, banking on the fact she'd be there to look after me. And of course, the tragedy of that is she just wasn't. So for me, that dealing with loss and grief started significantly when I had lost my mother, and I was you know, a wife, a mother myself, and a daughter, and working, and I had this small child at 2, and all I could see whenever I went out was mothers with their mothers and their children. Still, I can feel it now, because I think, how is there any justice that that continues and I don't have it? And then I would temper that with, I had an amazing mother for all those years, so I can't feel outrage, but I can feel loss, and I can feel sadness, and I can feel that, my goodness, she won't be there for all those milestones, that not only for me, but milestones for my children. So that, you know, that loss will never leave you. And I think also, you know, what we were talking about before everyone came on, is that loss can come from nowhere, that feeling of grief. And it's tempered for me over the years, but it never really loses, it never leaves you. And I think the difference for when my father died is there's no outrage. I don't feel that he was ripped away, whereas I do feel that, you know, with the loss of my mother, I can't help that emotion. And I look at my children and think how much they're missing by her not being there. The difference with my father is, of course, like, he moved in with us when he was 87, and he lived another life. No, he said to me that he felt invisible to the world when he'd hit 87, that nobody cared what he thought anymore, that he'd become irrelevant to society. And he'd hit a number, and suddenly everyone felt that his brain didn't work. And so he arrived here and said, no, I feel invisible. And within weeks of him walking into this multi-generational family, he said to me quietly, you've given me my visibility back. You've given me purpose. You've given me need. And I feel like I'm part of everything again. And suddenly he was in this multi-generational family, and the loss of my mother that we felt so profoundly, it was allowed to be packaged into a place that was okay. And because we'd given him life, and he was needed every day, he wasn't a spare, he was 1/5 of the family that we lived. And of course, in that moment that you all saw, when he came out for his first rehabilitation walk of the spring, and we were doing what everyone else in the country was doing, which was, we were in shock because of lockdown. And what would that mean? We have a mortgage, we have children, we have a business and employees, and no furlough at this point. What does this mean to us, and how will we cope, and how long can we sustain it for? And I think we were doing what a lot of the rest of the nation was doing, which was topping up our wine glasses, and being rather glad that there were a few bottles in the cellar. And the kids were cooking on the barbecue. It was a lovely day, and my father came out walking for his first rehabilitation walk of the spring. And he'd broken his hip 2 years before. And my husband said, keep the wine in mind. keep on walking, Tom. We can't throw you a birthday party, but why don't you walk 100 laps? We'll give you £1 a lap. And so he said, okay then. And I said to him, look, £100 doesn't buy you anything. Let's make it 1,000. I'll do a little press release and tell the local community what you're doing. We'll set up a Just Giving page, and the kids did an iMovie and we walked away. And within a week, we were at £500,000. And within 3.5 weeks, it was 38.9 million. And so he and I and the family went on this incredible journey. We're just the family. And within a week, we were on a global platform. He had become a beacon of hope, not just here. I mean, here was so important, but it became a beacon of hope to the world. People from 163 countries donated, means only 32 did not. So the impact of that for the family, sitting on the global stage with drones and helicopters and light aircraft coming down as low as they could to try and take photographs, satellite vans around every boundary and lenses at every meter pushed through the hedgerow. And me, honestly, concerned about, I have an 11-year-old daughter and I have no idea where these photos are going. And yet, amidst our anxiety and sometimes overwhelmed feeling, we knew that we couldn't stop because he was giving hope. He crossed the boundaries of gender, race, nationality, social status and age, and it was our responsibility and our duty to ensure that that lasting legacy of hope continued and touched as many people as we could. He was on the front page of almost every newspaper in every continent. And of course, many of you followed the journey, which was simply extraordinary. Within that, we set up the Captain Tom Foundation to ensure that his lasting legacy of hope lives on and the values that he so strongly believed in are preserved for everyone. But I suppose the thing that I always knew was coming, because he was 100, was he was going to die. And we did a lot of what I would implore anyone to do is plan. Plan the death. It's not a scary thing to do, but so many times we don't have the chance. So many times you're not expecting it to happen, so how can you plan? But we were lucky. We were able to plan and we were very open. So I knew exactly what he wanted. So that piece for me was taken care of. It was secure. I knew that when it happened, that piece was okay. What I could never have prepared myself for, though, was when I realized that he was going to die. How do I tell everyone that he's going to die without causing real anxiety? I felt genuinely, as his daughter, the responsibility of the nation and around the world. I knew, because we talked to them, how much they believed in him. So that first message I sent, which was to say, he's gone into hospital, but I think he's going to be okay, because we thought he would. By the time I got there, it was clear he wouldn't. So then we spent the last 3 days crafting his statement of death. What were we going to tell the world that would make sure that within already a crisis of economy and emotion, how do we tell the world it's okay? Like, he's died, but hope lives on. And I've never done anything so difficult in my life, but to get those words right, to make sure that the sentiment of everything that he lived for and existed for people that came out in that statement, because we knew once the statement went out that we would lose control of our grief. And we carved it out, and it took a long time to do it, and we tousled and turned. And I remember sitting in the room with him and saying to Benji, take his hearing aids out, please, just in case he can still hear. You know, we're like, please, I don't want him to hear us carving out what we're going to say. But actually I went, do you know what? They'll probably love to hear what we're going to say. So we had a bit of fun, and we stayed happy to the end. But we knew that when we sent the statement out, that everything we had as a family would be gone. And I don't mean that in a negative way, just I knew that we had to manage ourselves, because he'd lived around our table for 14 years. So within 4 minutes of us sending out the statement, it was international news. And that, I think, for many of you will understand grief, that to see that played out, and I think, Christine, you can particularly understand this, to know that once it's there, it's no longer yours to manage. And that we then had to share that. We knew we had to share it. And that, you know, I can honestly say the most powerful emotion I had was that I just wanted everyone else to know that we understood their grief and their loss too, but I knew that we had to have time to do it ourselves. And the truth is, I will never blame anyone for this ever. People forget he was my dad. So as we walk around and as we engage, people will tell me about their loss, and I'm really happy and delighted, genuinely. If I can help one person in sharing their grief story, I'll do it. And every time, again and again and again. But it meant that I could never share mine, and that I was never going to put my burden of grief on anyone else, and I won't do it. But I was very lucky. We have an incredibly tight family. But knowing that of the, say, averagely 10 people will come up to me in the street on a daily basis if I'm out, that half of those people connecting with me want to tell me their story of their loss. And so for me, grief is about giving people the opportunity, allowing people to talk about it. I think we're so afraid of we might misstep or say something wrong. In fact, I think everyone grieves differently, right? But I think just someone saying, are you okay? Tell me how you feel. And it's really okay if you cry, because I don't mind. And, it doesn't matter if you feel terrible today, because you don't have to tell me you're all right. And grief, as we know, can come in waves. And it can come just talking about it, like me talking about it today, and then for days you'll be okay. And of course, everyone has different elements of that. I feel more intense loss because I lost my mum when I needed her. And when I needed her to be a grandmother, and when I needed her to help me. The grief of my dad means that I suppose that I've become a grief counsellor on a global scale. And within that, I'm still finding myself spaces to allow my own grief. For me, we have to plan. When I knew that I had to deal with his death and move his body, because we had somebody trying to take photographs. So I knew I had to move his body in the dead of night to somewhere that no one would know, under a pseudonym. So we had amazing people helping. If I had had to worry about what he wanted or what any of the financial predicaments were, if I had had to worry about any of that, how could I have been free to do what I did? And so when people tell me and talk to me about it, I say, please, please plan, please know, and please understand the implications, because so much grief is made worse by financial pressures and not understanding what the will was, the will of the person was. So I would just say, let's be kinder, let's have more empathy, let's make spaces for other people's grief, and let's talk to the world. Everyone grieves at some point in their life, and some people just grieve way too early. And we just need to give people a chance, and we need to take it off out of the too difficult box. Let's put it on, it's okay, it's part of life. Death is part of life. It's just sometimes just not very easy. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight. I think whatever I can do to bring a platform to helping other people appreciate grief and how we can support each other, for me, I'll do it all the time. I think you're all doing an incredible job. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Hannah. I mean, we've had a lot of, little notes in the chat about that, and the appreciation of everybody for you to share your story, because you, as you said, I mean, there have been so many assumptions, and you've had to lead across the world, really, and without having a chance yourself to express your own grief. So thank you for supporting our campaign, and thank you for being here today. So yeah, as you said, share your story. I mean, that was the hashtag for last year's campaign, and that was incredibly important for those people who hadn't had a chance to share their story because it had been taken away from them with the pandemic. And it's all about hope. That's at the core of the Good Grief Trust. It's the core of the campaign every year. It's about hope, sharing that hope. So Paula, would you mind just putting the blueprint up? We're just going to briefly just go through the blueprint. These slides will be available to everybody after, but we're just going to give you a feel of where we want to go this year. So if we start the first slide, that would be great. That's the last one, Paula. Brilliant, thank you so much. So this year we feel I mean, it's time we're coming out this pandemic. We're coming out into communities. It's going to be an incredibly anxious and difficult time for so many, but also a time when people really need that. They need that connection. We're finding that with our cafes. We're finding that with the virtual cafes as well as the pop-up cafes and all the interaction that we have with our charities and support services. People seem to need that face-to-face connection now. So this is what the campaign is about this year. It's about creating warm connections. The next slide, thanks, Paula. So we want to reach out this year. We only have a week to do it. Again, we were talking before everyone came online that really these awareness campaigns have to happen throughout the year. This week is all about Baby Loss Awareness Week, and we've got Children's Grief Awareness Week coming up. But it culminates in a December campaign. But we really do need to raise awareness of the impact of grief and loss on a national platform every day of the week. But this is what we're trying to do this year. So we want to reach out into the communities. As we've said, grief has hit more of us than ever in the last 18 months. And our mission is to reconnect everyone and spread some warmth. We feel like there's been so much disconnection with services, with people, with friends, with family. We want to be able to reconnect everybody. Oh, sorry, Paula. Can we just go back one, please? Back. So the second slide, yeah, leave it there, thanks. So grief affects every community in our society, and we just need to give help and hope to us all. And obviously we want to raise awareness that we are a national charity, the Good Grief Trust, and we have hundreds and hundreds of wonderful services, tailored support services for anyone who's affected by any bereavement anywhere in the country. Thank you, Paula. Next slide. So, creating warm connections. We have very, very simple key messaging this year. We have 4 posters, which we'll share with you in a moment. Stopping for a chat, checking in on your neighbour, putting the kettle on. They couldn't be any simpler, but they will make such a huge difference. No matter how small, obviously, these everyday gestures can really, really fill us with the warmth. It's all about feeling orange, having that orange feeling, that real sort of connection with everybody, and the warmth that we can create in quite a cold environment that December can bring, and obviously through to those really cold, lonely months of January and February as well. So this year, National Grief Awareness Week 21 is brought to you by the Good Grief Trust, and we're celebrating those small face-to-face gestures that can really make a difference, and we want to encourage those warm connections. So thank you. Next slide. This is our logo. We wanted to connect the National Grief Awareness Week with the Good Grief Trust in a really strong way this year, because last year we had a lot of press, a lot of media, and we found it got lost. There was a lot of talk about National Grief Awareness Week, which was absolutely fantastic. But what we want to be able to do is signpost people to help and to hope as soon as they need it. So we've brought and amalgamated the 2 websites together, so anyone looking for help and support can immediately find exactly the right type of support. That could be a helpline, it could be a website, it could be just watching a video or a film from someone else. Thanks, Paula. So these are our 4 key campaign posters. These will be available in all formats across all social media. We'd love you to share these online. We'd love you to download them if you're working in a trust, in a hospital, in a community service, in a GP practice. Please do download them, print them off and put them out. So stop for a chat. It couldn't be simpler. Just stop for a chat with somebody you know, somebody in the street. Maybe you're going out for a dog walk, somebody who maybe looks a little bit lonely. Please just stop for a chat. It takes a couple of seconds. It can make such a huge difference. We know many of our people in our virtual cafes have got dogs during the pandemic and during the lockdown, and it's their only way of connecting with their community. Go for a walk and talk. We know many of our support services have already organised events for December to go out, get wrapped up, maybe wear a lovely warm scarf, an orange scarf, and connect with other people by having something quite fresh and obviously very healthy, going out for a walk and a talk. But again, sometimes when you're doing something, you're not sitting still in a sort of a sterile environment. It can really, really make a difference. Put the kettle on. Very, very simple. If you know somebody who's been grieving, if you know someone who's bereaved, just put the kettle on and invite them in for a lovely hot chocolate or a coffee or a tea, and have that time to listen. And listen is so valuable to people who are grieving. Checking on your neighbours. the final poster for the campaign. Literally knock on your neighbour's door if you know them, if you know that they're lonely, if they've been isolated through this pandemic, and particularly obviously if they've been bereaved, please just check on your neighbours. It takes a couple of seconds. Maybe just WhatsApp them then, if you don't sometimes feel comfortable knocking on the door, if you don't know them that well. But maybe WhatsApp them or phone them or text them or leave a little message on social media. It will really, really make their day. Next slide, please. So we want to light the UK in orange this December. We had an incredibly successful campaign last year. The final day of the campaign, which is 8th of December at 6 p.m, we lit up the country from Media City to Blackpool Tower in yellow. This year it's about orange. It's trying to create that really lovely cozy atmosphere and spread some warmth across the country. So we will be able to provide you with little candles to put in your windows, and they will be available from our merchandise shop. Thank you, Paula. So we have, as I say, two designs of our t-shirts, which maybe you can scroll through and we can have a look at. Next slide, please. Thank you. So spread some warmth, and we've got the logo. We've got two designs. Please order these. They will be at cost price, so that if you want to do fundraising in your own organisation, that would be amazing. We've obviously got Sands United, all those football teams. We'd love you to be able to wear our t-shirts. Last year we had some brilliant choirs putting together fantastic videos and wearing t-shirts. It makes such a big difference. If you have key ambassadors, we're very lucky at the Good Grief Trust. We've got some wonderful ambassadors, and we know many of your charities and support services have brilliant ambassadors that can really get the word out this year. And the next slide, thank you. So yes, how can you help? Very briefly, please get in contact with your local landmark buildings. That's council buildings. We had windmills and bridges and the Liver building and goodness knows what else lit up last year. It was incredible. We culminated with lighting up St Paul's Cathedral, the South Dome. If you know someone, please do let us know, and we can give you a template email. Light up your house, your workplace, your windows. Hold a fundraising event. And as I say, arrange a little walk and talk, stop for a chat, and think about maybe how you can put together a little event, maybe to incorporate the key messaging. Share the hashtag. That's really, really important during the campaign. Our posters will be downloadable. And as I say, please donate if you can to all those incredible charities under our umbrella and those that we don't even have listed. It's so important, particularly during the pandemic. We know that so many charities and sports services, particularly the smaller ones, have really been impacted, and they desperately need some funding. So please share their donate buttons. That would be wonderful. Thank you. Last slide. And the National Theatre have pledged to light up in orange. It was an incredible sight, I have to say. We were at St Paul's Cathedral last year, and I drove across the bridge, and to see the National Theatre lit up in yellow, flickering with the lights, it was just a wonderful thing to know that they supported. So the more buildings that we can light up, the better. Jules Lewis, our ambassador, has already pledged to light their garden at Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust, which is currently green. Their gardens will be orange this year. So if you have a garden and you've got little filters, please just make them orange, but share your pictures across social media. So that's a whistle-stop tour. Thank you, Paula, for sharing those, and we'll come back to the floor. So that gives you a sort of feeling about the campaign. As I say, the blueprints will be available as of today. All those posters available on our National Grief Awareness site and on the Good Grief site. So please do get in touch with us, and we will share all those links. So our next speaker, I'd love to introduce Christine Flack. Christine, we had the privilege of meeting a couple of weeks ago at the Who Cares Wins Awards. Christine presented an award to our volunteer Charmaine, who is also going to be joining Christine now for a chat. So Christine, I'm sure many of you know, is the mum of Caroline Flack, who very sadly died last year. And Christine was at the award ceremony to give the Mental Health Hero Award to our volunteer Charmaine George, who very sadly lost her son Ewan last year suddenly. And it was incredibly moving moment. And I know that Charmaine and Christine have really connected as two mums. And that's what this is all about. It's just about people who have that personal experience, and they can talk about it. They can talk about how they feel. And Charmaine now has started our pop-up cafes down in Cornwall. She's been running for pretty much a year now, bringing the community together. It's that reconnection, and that's the heart of our campaign this year. And I know that Christine is really keen to help us as well. She lives up in the Norfolk area. So welcome, Christine, and welcome, Charmaine. Maybe you'd like to have a chat. I'll just unmute you, Christine. Hang on. There we go. Charmaine, are you off mute?
Yes, yeah, I'm off.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Welcome, both of you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't really know what today was about. I've written a little bit about Caroline, if I may, if I could just read that, and then we'll talk, because like Hannah said, there's so many things when they're in the public eye that are written, and people, you know, but they don't know the actual person and their life, and so just to say, it's really good to be with so many people who feel as I do, but I wish that none of us needed to be here. I lost my daughter to suicide in February 2020, just after Valentine's Day, which was always the worst time of the year for Carrie. She did have a wonderful life with lots of wonderful highs, but she also always seemed to be waiting for the lows that were just around the corner. In 2019, my son Paul's partner was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Caroline was there immediately. She supported his whole family for a year and insisted Paul go. She's now well, and Carrie would have been so happy. She loved her nieces and nephews, and they adored her. They called her Auntie Safe, as she always worried about what they were up to. Carrie became very involved with mermaids, who supported her niece, and she also closely supported Choose Love, helping refugees. So I know she'd be really pleased I was here today and actually doing some good. I'm in the process of moving house and came across so many notes that she'd left me over the years, because she used to come and stay, but always be in bed when I went to work. And then she'd just leave a note when she left for home. And I'll just read just one that sort of sums her up, really. And she's got, Mum, well, by the time you read this, I will hopefully be sunning myself in Rio, because she'd got this lovely job, but not being eaten by a tiger or shot by a stray bullet. So she always found a downside. She thought something was going to happen. But it's got, I love you and we'll miss you, Carrie. And sorry, although she seemed so confident, inside she was still a little girl who just wanted to be loved and do the right thing. I just want to say what a wonderful idea the Good Grief Trust is, and it's so needed. I hope I'll be able to get more involved, and thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you, Christine. It's so brave of you to come and talk. Sorry. But you're with, well, you know, there are many people on the call who have such empathy for you and can feel for you, particularly Charmaine.
Yes,
Charmaine,
sorry.
Don't worry.
So yeah, no, I'm finding it really emotional today. And like Hannah said, it can hit you out of nowhere, and today seems to be a day where grief is right in front of me. And I obviously can resonate with Christine. When you lose a child, it doesn't matter how you lose them. Everything is turned upside down, and it's a very, very difficult place to be. One thing that I find, I don't know if you're the same, Christine, I feel like a bit of a leper, as in people don't want to talk to me.
Yeah,
I
they
have
don't know
people.
what to say. They don't,
No, they don't know what to
you know,
say.
it's
Yeah,
no.
it's hard though, and I think that's one of the reasons, you know, when I started the cafes was because I'm a really sociable person. I needed connection with somebody, and I knew that my immediate family weren't the right people to talk to because they were grieving themselves. You know, my poor mum, you know, she adored Ewan, absolutely adored him. She looked after him from when he was a baby, when I worked 3 days a week, and you know, she was watching me go through pain and grieving herself. So it is a really hard place to be, isn't it, Christine? And I was thinking about you yesterday after our conversation that we had, and in that you just have so many different more layers on top of yours, and also that, and Hannah said the same, that each of our grief stories is completely individual. There's no two the same ever. So it all depends on who you have supporting you, you know, how you lost your loved one. But I know that I found the support in the cafes with other people, that connection with other mums, and not just other mums, you know, the range of people that come to my cafes. You know, I've got a lady who lost her husband 16 years ago, and she said, oh, I just love coming. And she just looks forward. And you know, it seems weird that you look forward to a grief cafe, but actually we do. And I find that time really, really important, connecting with those people.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
And I think, and Christine, thank you so much for sharing that little note from Caroline, because I think, you know, as you said, it's so important to hear the real story behind, you know, particularly for you and for Hannah, behind the stories that come out. And it is about that person and that connection that you've had with that person, and she was your daughter, and Charmaine, was your son, but we have people obviously who've lost a cousin or a work colleague, or you know, someone who maybe wasn't a child or a parent or a spouse, but you know, it's the relationship that you've had with that person, and the assumptions sadly that are around grief, and that they're not as important, and that grief is not acknowledged as well. So you know, all these stories, as you've just said, Charmaine, are so important to tell, and to make sure that the general public have the words and the guidance on how to support people who are grieving, and if they've never experienced it themselves. And that's what this campaign is all about. So
actually, the language that Hannah used was really, I was really moved by that. I think you said about that someone, if somebody came to you and said, look, it's okay, I'm happy to listen, and it's okay if you cry. I think that, you know, that's really powerful, because it is difficult as well to know whether it's the right person to talk to or not as well. I think I spoke to this yesterday about a lady that attends my cafe. She says she puts her grief in a little box, but she selectively chooses who she shares that with, because some people just aren't worthy of knowing how she feels or what she's going through, because they don't listen or understand. So she's really selective, and I quite like that. I quite like that. But I also think we should all have that language of saying it is okay to talk to me. It is okay if I cry when I talk to you. I'd rather you do that than not talk to me at all.
yeah, exactly. And for those of you who don't know about our pop-up cafes, but we have Good Grief pop-up cafes which are running in Cornwall, in Oxford. We have an initiative with an organisation called Green Acres, where Caroline is actually. And it's just so valuable to bring local people together, to make those local connections with others who can help to sort of help them in their journey really locally as well, that just to make sure that they don't have to go too far to find someone, and build those new connections and new friendships with other people who understand. So if anyone wants to know about our cafes, please do get in touch. So thank you to Charmaine, and thank you to Christine for sharing.
Thank you.
That. Thank you so much, and we can't wait to continue this relationship. So thank you. So our next speaker is Connell. Connell Reid, welcome. So I met Connell, who is a police officer in the Metropolitan Police. And as I said, sadly, he lost his daughter Thea, but I'm sure he'll explain that. And we're now trying to work together to try and improve and offer more support to police officers across the Metropolitan Police and then in the wider community. So welcome, Connell. Oh, hang on a minute. Let me just unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Welcome. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. So yeah, I'm a police officer in the Metropolitan Police. I work with the Royal Family as a protection officer at their residential palaces. Last year, on 1st of March, I welcomed my daughter into this world, Thea. First time dad, best day of my life, and I'll obviously remember it for the rest of my life. Sadly, 2.5 months later, I was at work, just finished the night duty, and I was on the train home, and I got the phone call from my partner. As a police officer, you sort of know when something's not right, and at 6:30 in the morning, a phone call from my partner wasn't right. So I answered the phone, and my partner was in tears and told me the news that broke my heart and, you know, changed me as a person, that my daughter was no longer alive. And unfortunately, my daughter went to sleep on that night, 19th of May, and never woke. And that's something that I'm left to deal with, and, you know, and I'm now attached as a bereaved father. You know, important to me from coming from that is you're not chosen, you don't choose to be a bereaved. You are a bereaved, and that's something that I really struggled with, because for me, I wanted some answers. I wanted to get help. I wanted to support my family. But sadly, after losing Thea, it was a unique case. She had some special needs, and she was an undiagnosed child with a complex disability. And then after investigation, sadly to us, we found out that her diagnosed need attached to it was sleep apnea. Not saying that this would have saved my daughter's life, but if we had known that information, then we could have put something in place to potentially prevent this from happening. I only mention this is because we did loads of tests, me and my partner and my daughter Thea. And these tests were unfortunately neglected, and we thought they were sent off to the right agencies and hospitals, but unfortunately they weren't received. So our ship we thought was sinking sailing at the time was unfortunately sinking. So that's had an adverse effect on my grieving process as a father, and it has to my partner. I then, after 4 weeks, it took 4 weeks to put my daughter to rest, because there was 3 weeks of investigations, and the coroner didn't release my daughter for 3 weeks. That was a really, really difficult time for myself, not being around my daughter. She was in London and I'm from Herne Bay, and just not, as a parent, not being with your daughter to be able to comfort her. Because for me, my door was always open until I laid my daughter to rest. So those 4 weeks were really difficult for me. My work at the time supported me. I was on compassionate leave, and I came back to work to learn that I had to take annual leave for my daughter's funeral, something that just really didn't sit well with me. I was going through a really dark time at the time of returning to work. My role involved firearms, so I would have to book out a firearm each day, and I did so. But from reflection, it was a massive blur for me. And then in the new year, I wanted to do something about this. My managers supported me, but only offered me counselling. And for me, I didn't feel like I needed counselling. I needed something else. I didn't want, now knowing through research, bereavement isn't a mental health issue. It is just someone that needing grieving, but untreated bereavement could potentially lead to a mental health issue. I understand that. But my supervisors at the time didn't, and they only gave me the avenue of the counselling. I then did some research into this and to try and, you know, make a change, make a positive change, and not only that, keep my daughter's memory alive. And by doing that, I wanted to help others. So I set up a bereavement support group within the Metropolitan Police Service, and it involves 3 other committee members. And with this bereavement support group, we run like Good Grief Trust, we run a monthly meeting where our officers can get together, we can have a chat in an open forum. We use the online platform so we can tackle the issue with the bereaved that aren't so confident about talking up in public, so they can be our fly on the wall, don't have to put the camera on or open up the audio. I also wanted to tackle some training with the bereaved, so I'm now going into the training department within the Metropolitan Police Service, because unfortunately for me, and fortunately, we had police officers that arrived on scene, and it's a really difficult situation to deal with. They knew that I was a police officer, and they knew that certain things need to put in place. But there's certain language that's I resonated with me with at the time. I'm quite a young person, and there was some language used that it did affect me and my partner. One that I would mention was that, you're still young and you can try again, or go again, have another child. And for me, it was like, you're hurting my pain even more, and on reflection, I want to make a change to that. I want to, look at areas where we can, focus on the do's and don'ts to say around the bereaved, because it is important for those vital first moments when someone's lost someone. And for me, it was unexpected. I didn't know, my daughter, for me, went to bed one night and I thought, I'll be back home to give her cousins a kiss in the morning. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So I'm now at a stage where we're working with Linda and other charities so we can try and get this package together and to roll it out there so we can support our officers on frontline duty dealing with people that obviously have lost a loved one. But in doing so, trying to use this platform as well, if there's anyone out there that has any expertise in this field, they'll be very much open to have a discussion so you can help me help others and hopefully make it better for our police officers for today, going out there and helping bereaved families. But yeah, that is the main reason why I'm here today. I stand on a bereavement support group. I want to make a change. I return to work. One of the big things for me, I thought, I was well liked within my department. Well, I thought I did, but the day I returned from my leave, my compassionate leave, I felt like I was the most hated person in the world. And this is purely because, sadly, people don't want to have that conversation with you. And for me, I want to keep my daughter's memory alive. And for you to ask me a question about my daughter, let me speak, let me talk about it. Don't be afraid about talking about your children. And, if you get me to cry, that's positive. That I see that as a positive thing, because I'm crying for my daughter, I'm crying for my pain, but it's reliving her memories, it's reliving her name, and it's keeping her name out there. And that's really important for me. And I see grieving process as a very positive thing for me. I'm thankful that I've started my grieving process. I know I work with a few members that haven't, but I'm thankful that I have, because it keeps my daughter's memory alive, and it makes me, hopefully be stronger and help others that aren't so fortunate and hasn't got on that, journey and help them towards that end goal of getting better and, being confident and getting back to work and, going about their daily life. But for me, it was really important that people understand or are more aware about dealing with someone that's come back from a loss, because we shouldn't be shadowed. We shouldn't be put in the dark. We are the same person, but unfortunately we've just lost someone. And that shouldn't change the way you approach me or talk to me. And that's just really, really important for me. And I'm very passionate, and I always will be. I'm accepted that I'm going to be grieving for the rest of my life, and I'm more than happy with that. And I will be working with the organisation to make sure that this bereavement support goes on to the future, and then hopefully other forces, and then expands out, because it is now time where we need to make a change. We need that support there for us, and and we need to speak openly about it. Being a bereaved is not a negative thing; it's a positive thing. I think that's me in a nutshell, Linda. I'm not sure there's anything else that I can add or think.
Thank you, Connell.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Linda. If I just say something to Connell, because actually, what you're saying about the police force is really important. The day that he went missing first, as his mother, I thought he'd had a car accident and he was in a hedge somewhere in Cornwall and no one could find him. But when his dad and the two police officers turned up at the door, it was his dad that said that he died, and it was that moment of the absolutely hideous. I screamed, fell to the floor. But the police officers, if I remember, they came in through the door. They didn't come in and sit us down or anything, and they just said, "Oh, you'll be contacted by somebody else later on." and literally walked out the door, and me and my ex-husband was stood there going, what do we do now? What do we do now? Sorry, you know, honestly, I was bewildered by it.
But that will, things like that stays with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
In a negative way. So that is so crucial to us, finding out this information, because, you know, this will stay with you for the rest of your life. Of course it will. Yeah. But we want to make it as easy as possible. And I think if a police officer attending and gives you the right service, that will stay with you. You know, and you're more open to say, do you know what? Thank you for helping me at that difficult time. But unfortunately, you can remember a negative time. And do you know what? I understand. I do this in my own time. I don't get paid to do it, unfortunately. I have an operational duty. I do it in my own time. So I understand the constraints of, you know, staffing levels and training and costing and all that. But I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to put that package out there. You know, and hearing those stories, I need people like you to come forward and explain to me. And you can tell me as a bereaved what would have been better for you. Give me some advice, because I can only talk on, you know, losing my daughter, but I can't imagine, you know, losing my father, or my mother, say a sister or a brother. I can't resonate for that. And you know, it's having people like yourself come forward would help me. Yeah,
I'm happy to chat. I'll be happy to chat with you. And
that'd be brilliant.
Story. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Connell.
Thank you. Thanks, Charmaine. Thank you, Connell. Exactly. It's putting together that package of awareness that we can then hopefully make those changes and those improvements. And again, many of you know that we are Secretariat to the APPG on bereavement support, and that's all part of the influence to try and influence government to make changes and try and fund different initiatives. So let me just move on.
Linda,
yes,
sorry, I can see that Christine wants to say something.
Oh, Christine, sorry.
Again, I'm sorry, Connell, you're taking all the queries here, but I know when I went to see Carrie, the first thing the police said to me, because she was obviously where she was, and don't touch her, don't go near her, do you know, and that's very hard not to go near. And they let me walk out of that door. They didn't know where I was going. They didn't know, they didn't ask, and there was nothing from them. And I just think it must be such a large part of the policeman's job dealing with bereavement in any way, and it's not the people, it's not the personalities, they're doing a job, you know, but it would be good if there was something set in place.
And I'm trying my best, and I will continue to try my best to put that in place, because unfortunately police officers coming through these days, and I'm not being an ageist in this, but I had a 20-year-old and a 24-year-old come to my daughter's death. You know, they haven't got the life experiences of, you know, older officers. But, you know, this is why putting a training package into place, teaching the younger officers how to deal with that significant loss and that traumatic experience. For you to be told, don't touch, you know, okay, that might have been a case, but there could have been a better way of doing it. There could have been a plan in place.
What I want to do is hold them.
Of course, exactly, and exactly what I wanted to do that morning when I got home. But I only knew, you know, that the policies and things, there had to be an investigation. But you are like, you know, you angry. You just want to be there for your daughter, and exactly it. And I will promise you that I'll continue to try and change for the better.
Sorry, Linda.
I'm just saying, Linda. I'm so sorry, Christine, for for that reaction, because you know, you can see the pain, and for those of us with children, it couldn't be any worse. And to make those changes so that police officers are understandable of those tiny little things that are so huge, absolutely huge. It's the detail that is you're left with feeling as though what you needed to have done wasn't done at the time. So as Connell said, Christine, please be reassured that we are working towards that, and we will try and stop any other family going through something like that if we can possibly do.
Linda, it's Lydia.
Hi, Lydia. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a bereavement midwife, and an initiative we've been using is getting the police back into the hospital whenever they've gone out to a maternal death or a neonatal death or anything like that. We had a case recently where two very young police officers who had children witnessed a child die and being brought back in and being resuscitated. And an initiative we're doing with the London Ambulance Service and the police is trying to bring them back in for debriefs to talk through it, because then I think they see the repercussions and realise it's okay that you can be human, because I think it's something about the police that make it's regimented. You can't feel things because you're not going to be a good policeman. And I think that's something we're really working on, and I'm very happy to help as well. But we've seen a massive change, and all the police we've invited back to the debriefs have all come, which I think is a massive thing. But I think it's a really important aspect of it to let them know, be human in those circumstances, you know, because it's just so important. Sorry, I just want to say that.
No, don't worry, Lydia. Thank you so much. And anyone who's got any feedback, please let us know either in the chat or afterwards, and we can share all this knowledge and information and details with everybody. Thank you. Sorry, everyone, we're running a bit late, but I just wanted to be able to get our next speakers on. If everyone can just stay online a little longer than expected, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Jules, can I get Jules on now, our ambassador who is working at Shrewsbury and Telford Trust. I'm not sure if we've got Jackie Brunton as well, who is working at Blackpool, again with the bereavement teams. Jackie, are you online? I'm not sure whether she's had to go back to her job. So Jules, please, maybe you're welcome. Maybe let us know, tell the group how you work with the SWAN model and obviously with the Good Grief Trust cards. Thanks, Jules.
So I'm Jules Lewis, lead nurse here at Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital. And thank you so much for sharing your stories. It's just amazing to hear you. And Connell, Christine, Charmaine, everybody really on the call. I would like to offer as well. I am very, very passionate about kind language when we're talking at end of life and when somebody has died. My best friend took her own life. She was 47 on 17th of February 2019. And I remember her family saying to me, you know, that they said they like to view the body. And when they told me that, my heart just sank. And it's about visiting the person to say goodbye and making it as kind. It's an awful thing that's happening, but we can help to make it the most kind thing. We can't take away the pain, but we can be so kind. So I'm very passionate about kind language. I don't like the term committed suicide. It should be took their own life, bereaved by suicide. That's my personal opinion. Very outdated term. Visit, say goodbye to the person. We don't view the person. They are our loved one. We say goodbye. And important conversations, not difficult, because if you tell medical staff they need to have a difficult conversation with a family member, it'll be put down the list. It's an important conversation that needs to be had now. It's a priority. So I would love to work with many of you and improve communication. It's all about kindness, empathy, compassion and dignity. And we have one chance to get it right. And you know what, we try our best, but when we don't get it right, we need to listen to families and we need to take on board and learn lessons from not getting it right. So here at Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital, I've been working with Linda now for almost a year. I became an ambassador in November last year, and we started putting in the Good Grief cards into our packs that go out to bereaved families, or if they're actually in the hospital when their loved one dies, which happens very frequently, then we would give them a SWAN bag with useful information, signposting to the Good Grief Trust, and the really useful signposting and what to do next booklet from the hospital as well. We've also got pen, paper, tissues, the all-important tissues, because giving people permission to cry is so important. And a little jewellery bag as well, to put jewellery and give it back, gift it back to the families in a jewellery bag, because it deserves that kindness, doesn't it? Not just hand it over in someone's hand. It's precious, that jewellery, that ring, that necklace, or a hair lock. Some people like to have a hair lock. So we've been putting this that doubles up as a condolence card. It's a lovely card. And then inside there's a little credit card with information and the Good Grief Trust's details. Patients' relatives are saying that they really appreciate it. That's the feedback we're getting. The staff, myself and the team I work with, really feel it helps us, because as you can imagine, in a busy general hospital, we so want to deliver brilliant end-of-life care. We also want to ring up people the following week to see how they're doing, and we just don't have capacity of that because we're having to move on to looking after, you know, end-of-life care patients. I do my best trying to ring relatives up when I can, and the bereavement team ring relatives up to talk through next steps and signpost as well, so we make sure there's a follow-up. But I try my best, if I've had a lot to do with families, to give them a call and just see how they're doing. And they're telling me that having this card in the pack shows we care, and it's in the house. They don't have to navigate through a complicated system, services to find the service that they need. They've got it to actually, you know, pick up and make that call. And it's about being brave, isn't it, to make that call. And if somebody, you know, if you're in a really privileged position that somebody shares with you that they want help, then it's us as professionals that we really need to encourage them to get the help they need. But listening with that empathy and fascination and not being preoccupied by something else. It's real listening, not waiting to speak. It's that skill, isn't it, that you're listening and you want to support and signpost people at the hardest of time. And I am in an absolutely privileged position. I think I have the best job in the world, which people think I'm a bit strange because I love my role, but it's about making the best of an awful situation. And I do my best to do that. And this trust doesn't always get it right, but when we don't get it right, we need to listen, and kind language is so important. So we will continue to give these out to every bereaved relative, friend, whoever's important to that person. And we will be doing lots for National Grief Awareness Week. I would love to work with many of you, like all of you. I'm a volunteer, do this in my own time. I'll work extra tonight to make sure that I've got this in today. But I will do anything I can just to help one family. If they don't have to go through or make it easier for them, then I have done my work. But we'll be lighting up Sir Captain Tom Moore's garden here at Telford Hospital, and at Shrewsbury we'll be doing the statue, the NHS 70 statue. And I, as Linda knows, I'm a bit of a person that just keeps on asking people, so I'm asking the I'm Celebrity Castle and all sorts of other people, please light it up in orange for National Grief Awareness Week. But thank you, and thank you for sharing your stories, because really emotional, but we as professionals need to hear them to improve the care that we deliver. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jules. And it's so important that we raise awareness of these incredible initiatives that NHS trusts and GP practices have put together, just so that others who don't understand or haven't got those resources or the awareness again can just replicate that. It's just so simple. So thank you, Mike. Let me get you on now. So Mike Pollard is founder of Sands United Kent. Really lovely to see you. I met Mike through Connell, who came into one of our pop-up cafes. Welcome, Mike. Maybe you'd like to share your story and see how we can work together for Grief Awareness Week.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for everybody that shared their story so far as well. It's yeah, really emotional listening to everybody, and but privileged to be amongst you as well. So I'm Mike Pollard. I'm a father of 4 boys. However, only one of my babies is here in my arms with me. 3 of my boys are up in the stars. So following the loss of twin boys, Harrison and Jake, in October 2017, and then 8 months later, another son, Zach, I was, lost. Was totally lost, and there's a massive emphasis on mums and baby loss, and as dads are in a bit of a grey area, what I found it anyway. So I found something to keep myself occupied was do something I wanted to do instead of sitting in a circle, instead of going to a support meeting, just hold my hand up saying, I'm a dad and I I'd lost my babies, I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I heard of a football team started. I thought, oh, that's a good way. I love playing football myself, and what better than trying to get a team of dads together to play some football. I set up Sands United Kent because Sands were the charity that helped me, and you know, they had the emblem, the orange kit, everything just jumped out at me about the charity itself. But there definitely wasn't anything like this in the area. So just using the powers of social media to help, you know, get the word out there. It started off, you know, just a handful of people contacting, but it turns out I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person out there. And just for me personally, connecting with other dads that have been through these similar circumstances, you know, created something special, and it helped me keep their legacy alive, you know, through the means of helping others as well. Sands United it's quite a unique way for dads and other bereaved family members to bring them together through the love of a sport and find a support network where they're at ease to be able to talk about their grief openly and when they're ready and comfortable to do so. The teams have some ways and places to commemorate our babies. So we proudly, underneath the badge on the shirt, as you can see here, we put our babies' names underneath the badge, always across the heart. And from that, we've now gathered over 50 dads in Kent that we've been in contact with. We've reached out, Connell being one of the dads that is here today, that we now support as a team. And it's somewhere you can just go and you can be yourself. You know, if you're having a bad day, there's someone there at the team, at the training session or at the game that knows how you're feeling. And you don't even have to say anything sometimes. Sometimes it can just be a look and someone just knows, like, I know the right thing to say or do, or a hand on the shoulder, or any little small thing like that, that it goes a long way. So we train socially on a Thursday evening, and we play friendly matches across the year, traveling around the area and even out the area and around the country, just raising money for Sands and raising awareness really that dads, there is something out there for them, and we'll keep doing it. We've also started. We've got some competitive guys on the team that, you know, so we've started it in playing a competitive Sunday morning football as well, and we're doing all right at the moment actually. There's something that we recently realised as well by playing it, is that nobody that we come up against on the football pitch will ever have the heart and desire to play the game as much as what we're playing it for. We're playing it for our angels out there, you know, compared to the regular Sunday morning footballer. We're out there for a totally different reason, and that's what makes the team so special. You know, win, lose or draw, I'm with my new family on the football pitch, and it really makes you feel not alone. Because we are a big team, we have dads across the year that are staggered, that all have their anniversaries throughout the year. So whenever it comes to that match day that's closest to their Angels anniversary, we give them the captain's armband for the day, and we give them the opportunity to honour the baby with either a minute's silence or a minute's applause pre-game. And it's just that moment of reflection pre-game that everybody remembers why we're here, what we're doing, and you just forget about it. Once you're back on the pitch with your guys alongside you, sort of day-to-day troubles are out of your mind, and you can be free for 90 minutes at a time, and it's that 90 minutes that you need sometimes. And yeah, that's a little brief synopsis really about Sands United and what we're doing, and we're going to continue growing, driving and getting awareness out there, and just, you know, keep supporting them dads, because you know, it's their baby as well.
Amazing, thank you, Mike. Again, you know, notoriously men are really difficult to open up with their emotions, particularly through bereavement or any sort of anxiety, or so this absolutely gives people a platform, and as you say, just for that time, that 90 minutes, and also that social interaction. Again, it's making connections with others who understand. So amazing work. Thanks so much, and thank you for supporting the campaign, and we can't wait to see how we can get the teams all kitted out and raising awareness and lighting up all the stadiums orange, and anything else we can possibly do to raise awareness of your support, because that's the whole point. We need to raise awareness of all these specialist services and charities if people don't know about them. We've through the pandemic, we've had so many people in the virtual cafes not even knowing about things like Silverline, who has a huge presence, you know, for the older generation, people like that. They don't know about these charities, and they need to know about them. So finally, we've got some amazing people up in Scotland, Nicole and Hilary, who are our brand new volunteers for the Good Grief Trust. Hilary has been a huge supporter of the charity since she lost her husband, and Nicole's come on board lately to help with the National Grief Awareness Week. So welcome to both of you. Nicole sadly lost her baby, and she has this charity called Our Missing Piece, and Hilary is working sort of across the farming community, really, and trying to help those who have lost somebody out in those remote areas in Scotland. So we need to be able to reach those four corners and beyond, really. So welcome, Nicole and Hilary. Maybe you'd like to chat about what sort of events maybe that you can put together, and obviously your stories. So Hilary, I don't know if you wanted to start. Welcome. Oh, let me just hang on a minute. Let me just unmute you. Make sure you're both unmuted. There we go. Welcome, Hilary. Hi, Nicole.
Hello. I have to say, well, as others have said, it's a great privilege to be here today and to hear other people's stories. It's really very moving. I won't say I'm lost for words, but I'm almost. One of the things I did want to comment on, I mean, I could comment on what everyone has said, but particularly Jules, Lewis, you know, your work in the hospitals. In my experience, the information I have gained from other online sites, bereavement.co.uk, for example, the hospitals are often really, really poor, or have been, at being able to support people or even knowing what to say. It was certainly my experience. I lost my husband very, very suddenly. I came into the house and he was gone. That's my partner, husband of more than 46 years. And I had a lot of, I called up some friends immediately as well as the, obviously the emergency services, and I did CPD for 20 minutes, but it was a cardiac arrest, a little blood clot in the blood vessel, undetected heart disease and so on. Sorry.
It's
all right.
Yeah, so sorry.
Anyway, yes, it's funny, isn't it? The triggers that sometimes kick in. Anyway, I was then, because I had chest pains from doing the CPD for 20 minutes, I got taken off to the hospital, and you're just left sitting there for a while, just in isolation, until someone comes and checks you out, and then you're sent home. Unfortunately, I had two friends at home who were there ready for me when I got back. But I mean, after that, I was just totally on my own, because we didn't have family. I had relatives down south. One or two good friends in the area, thank goodness. And a little while later, after the funeral, I had everything to do myself. After the funeral, I just had such a bad spell. I honestly couldn't believe that I was going to live. It was that bad. And a friend just turned up, as luck would have it, and I was off to the nighttime clinic. And I was briefly put on beta blockers, that sort of thing. And I was given some information from the hospital, and a book list, and the drawing on this printed sheet. It was an effort at being kind, but the drawing on this 18 pages on the front was a chair just sitting there empty. And I thought, this is just dreadful. And the references, everything, it was just awful. And one of the things I thought at the time, and very shortly afterwards, I thought something better has to come out of this. And looking at one or two Facebook pages, bereavement.co.uk, if anyone's come across that, because I only discovered these things, I only discovered the support months later, because I got offered counselling if I wanted it with my local GP, but I completely forgot that. And it, you know, someone else suggested one of the other well-known sites. And so I really just sort of worked my way through this until I began to sort of feel I could communicate a bit on my own. Friends did drop in, but of course people think that after a while you're not too bad, and they certainly think after a year you're okay. But we all know that's not the case. Anyway, bereavement.co.uk, I don't know if anyone here has visited that, but you do hear some such sad, sad stories. And also the failure for people to be able to communicate their feelings to other members in the families, and how many families sort of seem to fall apart, and the also awful rifts that develop in the different families, and breakdowns in communication because people can't share grief. And sorry, I hope I'm all right here. When I look back in the past, I lost my father very suddenly from heart disease when I was 15, and one didn't really talk about things much in those days. And I think that it creates such blocks in people if we're not able to share the emotions and we're not able to have them recognized, and it creates such long-lasting trauma, PTSD, whatever you like to call it. And this is why this is the driver for me anyway, to try and raise awareness or help raise awareness of the marvelous work of the Trust in Scotland. Very, very briefly, I'll just say that we are looking at the possibilities of pop-up CAFs. We're looking at working through the Community Pharmacy Scotland Society for getting information out through there. One of the things that still concerns me is the NH Trust in Scotland. How do we reach? I know that the Trust has been getting out to all the hospital trusts, NH Trusts, but how do we actually monitor what's going on in the various hospitals and trusts throughout? And of course, the other one is the undertakers and those people who have to the front line of dealing with those of us who are bereaved. And quite a few of them do have their own publications that can be very helpful to hand out to people. Mine didn't. Everything was so, I felt for the chap who was running the undertaker, running the service. But it's so sort of clinical in a way, or can be. And it's just how to get out communication, how to get out if it's okay to feel things, how to get anyone who's having to deal with bereaved people, how to try and respond to them. And when I look back on how I've dealt with, not dealt with, that's the wrong word, but how I failed to support friends, older friends in the past who had lost someone, and one would go and see them, one would help here and help a bit there. But I feel that personally, I fell so far short of really understanding and being able to provide the support. There was always a feeling in the past, well, that's awful, but we have to sort of get on with it. And I recognize now how much more has to be, how much more we need to do. I think I ought to stop.
Oh, thank you, Hilary. And I know you've said it's been incredibly difficult to find that, and which is why we're so grateful for you to work with us as a volunteer in Scotland, and hopefully during National Grief Awareness Week to put together the pop-up cafe, but also to work going forward with those community pharmacists. There are 1,200 pharmacists, and those are in the communities, and they have an opportunity to give that information and to raise awareness of the support that is available that many people don't know about. So thank you, Hilary. Nicole, welcome.
Hi.
Lovely to see you.
Hi, so I'm Nicole. As previously mentioned, back in 2012, my 4-month-old son, he was involved with an accident which sadly meant he lost his life. But previous to that, we'd had miscarriages, and after that, and as life evolved, my eldest son ended up getting into arguments with adults to prove that his baby brother existed. And so my husband's in the military, so we move around quite a bit, and we very quickly recognised that bereavement support is a bit of a postcode lottery, and depending on where you are in the world depends on the amount of support you get. We were really lucky that when my son Ben died, we had the Scottish Cot Death Trust step in, even though it wasn't their remit. They took us under their wing and we were supported. Moving down to London, that support wasn't there, and then moving around. So I got, as very many bereaved people do, get a bit angry with the system or get upset or try to change it. And so I made a little purple heart with a jigsaw piece missing, just to represent that I'm a bereaved parent, and to highlight the name Veloma, which is the name for a bereaved parent, because society as a whole says, oh, that grief's too big, we don't deal with that, it's not even got a name. And it does. So I've spent the last 4 years sort of trying to raise the profile of bereaved parents and make a community and do similar to what the Good Grief Trust does of signposting, but just for the bereaved parents. And then in the last 16 months, I've lost 3 grandparents. And that grief is exactly the same. Yes, the loss of my son is imprinted, it's fundamentally changed who I am as a person, but the impact of the sudden loss of my grandparents triggered all of those emotions, and it hit me really hard that we need to be talking as a whole. And when my friend Maxine, who is helping with the National Grief Awareness Week, contacted me and said, what do you think, especially now I'm back in Scotland, and the resources in Scotland are incredibly different to that in England, and the logistics, the geographical locations of everyone are very different. And I'm very fortunate that with the work I've been doing, I have done work in Parliament and things like that. So since speaking to Linda and a few weeks ago, we have started the ball rolling with MSPs and getting them on board, because I think, especially after the last 18 months, I think the whole of the world, not just the UK, needs to be allowed a moment of recognition that we're all allowed to be sad, and grief is normal and actually really healthy. And if we stunt it, all we do is kick the can down the road. We don't actually get anywhere. And in my work that I've been doing, no matter who you are or what your story is, if the moment that somebody genuinely asks if you're okay is the moment that you genuinely feel cared for. When Hannah, you were talking before about holding your own grief in to be able to be there for other people, I think sadly, because my son's accident, I was involved with the accident. I felt a lot of responsibility for that, and there'll be so many elements and ties in everybody's grief journey that is the same. You hold your own to be able to protect and honour other people's spaces, and whilst that's really great for everyone else, you're left holding your own. And I think if we, as listening to everybody's stories, we all are doing our own amazing thing. And I'm seeing the amount of people on this call and how brilliant this is. I think it's needed, welcomed, and I love the fact that we're going to glow up in grief. I think it's brilliant. So yeah, I'm fully on board and very excited, and I think the world needs it.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much. And oh my gosh, everybody's been so eloquent and passionate, and thank you.
Could I say something?
Yeah, sure. I've got John as well wanted to say something. But just before that, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone staying. I know we're running over, but I can see everyone's passion and commitment to this. So I just really appreciate your time. So thank you so much. John, can I just get John? Sorry, who was that chatting? But can I just get John Wilson, who's had his hand up for a while? You've been very patient, John. Please do join us. And then I'm not sure who that was who was speaking, but if you wouldn't mind just putting it. Oh, it's David. Hi, David. We'll have you in 2 secs. Let me just have John. You're welcome. Lovely to see you.
Hi. Sorry I joined late. I was in another meeting about research into grief. Just wanted to introduce myself. Just to say, my son died at 14 months old, and he would have had his 40th birthday 2 weeks ago now, September the 16th. And I've been doing grief research for 10 years. I've been a bereavement counsellor for 21, 22 years now. And I write about grief, I research grief, and I teach about grief. So if any organisation would like my services, I'm here. Consultancy, teaching, courses, whatever. And I'll put my email address into here now. It's j.wilson2, and it's York St John University, so it's yorksj.ac.uk. And the other way to find me is my Twitter account, and that's just at capital, I don't think it matters, but J Wilson Online. And so that's quite another good way to reach me. But if anybody does want any help or anything, consultancy, whatever, that's where I am.
Thank you, John. And I'd have to say that John's an amazing author as well. He's written this incredible book called The Plain Guide to Grief. And I would recommend that. We often recommend that to our cafe members. So thank you, John, for joining us. Sorry, who was it? Oh, David. Yes. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hi.
David Compez. Welcome.
I look back 60 years and realised how insensitive I was as a youth when I first hit the wards. And picking up on Jules' material, the things we haven't heard today is about teaching medical, nursing and paramedic students how to handle these issues. And I wonder if we ought to have some teaching material available from a good grief trust that can be used when young people first hit clinical situations and realise they've got to say the right things to the right people at the right time. So that's my contribution today. Please, let's put up a teaching pack of somehow and get people to do it. And I see Jules is nodding. Thank you, Jules.
Absolutely, Jules. I'm sure you'd appreciate that, and I'm sure that we will be bringing together all those resources, David. So thank you. Yes, one of our ambassadors, Dr. Amir Khan, he actually trains GPs, and we're trying to work with him as well to try and bring more awareness to GPs and local community services as well.
Sorry. Before
David.
Before they even get to GPs, as soon as they hit the wards or ambulances and things, there ought to be at least one session on sensitivity handling of people who've lost. I'm sorry, I wasn't even thinking about this at the beginning of today, and people have triggered me by saying how often the wrong thing was done on the wrong occasion. And this is not a little add-on to put on at the end of your training or your career. It's a thing that we've got to... Oh, Jules keeps nodding at things I'm saying. I'm glad we're on the same wavelength.
Absolutely, David. I'm sure Jules would completely agree with you. It's fundamental, and it is tagged on. It's exactly what you said. It's an afterthought. And many nurses that we've spoken to have never been trained in any sort of bereavement care or knowledge. And it's not good enough because it is so crucial. And as you said, Connell, you're left with the words that people have said to you ringing in your ears, and it shouldn't be there. Sorry, Nicole. Hi.
I just wanted to say we're actually up here in Scotland. We are actually working with ambulance and paramedics, because it was paramedics that helped with my situation. So the movement for the healthcare, and I've reached out to Connell just because the police were involved in our situation as well, and it's something that there is a momentum there that is going, and I think as the Good Grief Trust will, if tap into the right people as they are already doing, I think it's something that will flow really. There's a huge wave coming forward at the moment of people wanting to make the change, and like David said, the people who are first at the point, they are wanting to get the training, and they are they're open to it, especially because so many organisations are now volunteering this time because they can't afford for the training. There's a whole, because my world is in the baby loss world, there's a whole movement of midwives who are being trained, and that's happening. So I think there's the national bereavement pathway as well, which is making a big difference to how people are being treated. So the rumblings are there, and I do think this tsunami of everybody will make a big difference.
It is, exactly, and it's bringing those initiatives together, bringing those gold standard work placements together, and just making sure that we are all working in synergy and not in silos, and that we can all share that incredible knowledge and those resources that everybody's worked so hard to achieve. And I know that we've got Tom from Marie Curie on the line, and I think we've got Leslie Goodburn, who's one of the commissioners at the UK Commission for Bereavement, who are putting together a report that we want to also work with very closely through the National Grief Awareness Week and our findings. And that's exactly what we're doing with our initiative from the Department of Health, providing the Good Grief card across all the trusts across the UK and the GP practices, and we're getting that feedback from those individual offices as to the work that they need to do to improve and to influence change as well. So yeah, exactly what you're saying, Nicole, let's all work together, and David, definitely. There is a movement, and it has been coming for a while, but sadly, well, COVID, I mean, the only thing probably that it's shone a light on is the need for us all to come together and raise awareness of the impact of loss and grief on a national platform, and make those really significant changes. So listen, unless everybody, I'm so grateful for everybody staying online. It's 2 o'clock and we've run over, and I don't want to take anyone else's time, but just to give you a couple of seconds, please, you're welcome to stay on, and please do just put your contact details if you haven't already, just so that we can keep you in the loop. We can keep you in contact with our newsletters, and obviously share these slides and updates from the call. But let me just say, firstly, Hannah, thank you so much for sparing the time to come today. We are hugely grateful for your support for National Grief Awareness Week. We have a launch event. I'll go through our amazing speakers as well, but just to let you know before you sign off, we have a London launch event. We would love your support. It's on the 2nd of December. So the National Grief Awareness Week every year runs from the 2nd to the 8th of December. So we're just finalising a location. Connell very kindly has said he helped us with that. We've got many of our MPs from our APPG who are very keen to come. I know many of you have committed already to come into London for the 2nd of December. We have a big double-decker bus with all the branding on it, and we'll have information to give out. We really want those frontline services and individuals affected by grief, as well as all the ambassadors and incredible people who are really keen to support the campaign. So please put that in your diary, the 2nd of December, but we will obviously send out updates. So huge thanks to Hannah. Christine, thank you so much for being so brave and telling your story about Caroline, and we feel like we know her a little bit better now, so thank you so much. Thank you to Connell, thanks to Mike Pollard, to Jules Lewis, our amazing ambassador. Thank you to Hilary and Nicole. Thank you to Charmaine, and I'm not sure whether Jackie Brunton was online, who was going to be joining Jules anyway, but thank you. I don't think I've left anybody out. I hope I haven't. Hilary Barker and Nicole up in Scotland, huge thank you. Obviously to all our trustees and supporters and ambassadors. I hope I haven't left anybody out. But we have a record.
Linda.
Who's that? Sorry.
Thank you, Linda.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, It's just so humbling, honestly, to, you know, I particularly, when I was at the award ceremony recently, I just couldn't believe it. I was shaking trying to record Charmaine's award, because the awareness, Prince William was there, you know, the Prime Minister was there, Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary was there, who went up to Charmaine and said thank you. But we need to continue that awareness. You know, it's amazing to have these awards, it's amazing to have these campaigns, but it needs to be throughout the year, and we need these improvements to be made and sustained, because grief is a big deal. And, you know, grief can be complicated, but access to support should never be, and that's our mantra. So huge thank you, everyone, and we will continue this collaboration and these connections, and we are so grateful for you to spend your time with us today, and have a lovely afternoon, whatever you're doing. Stay safe. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Part of me was in shock and sort of closing down, no sleep, but the other half of me was like, I need to survive, and I was, you know, Googling what's unexplained death in childhood, and just felt that I needed to speak to other people who'd gone through the same thing. So I was not going to rest until I'd actually spoken to someone that had gone through the same thing as us. And, you know, I sat with Rex in my arms for probably 2 hours thinking, this is just unbelievable. I have to make something good come out of this tragedy for me, but also the family and all the, you know, other you know, grandparents, siblings, uncles, aunts, everyone. Well, both the Lullaby Trust and SCDC Foundation put us in contact with the different people who'd gone through the same thing. So that's 2 families in the UK who I spoke to. And one of them was raising money for a first study at Great Ormond Street, looking into sudden unexplained death in childhood. So that really helped me focus in those beginning days of thinking, okay, what can I do? Raise money for the first study into sudden unexplained death. And instead of asking people for flowers, I said, please donate whatever you can to this first study. And that kept me really busy. And it went viral basically, and we managed to raise, you know, a substantial amount of money. And the Great Ormond Street study is going ahead now and should be published in September. It's a retrospective study, so it's looking at lots of post-mortems of, you know, up to, I think it's 900 children unexpected deaths, and so that they can, you know, compare them all. So hopefully, you know, similarities will come out, and they'll start trying to understand what triggers there are, and hopefully that will help us be able to predict it, and then eventually one day prevent it. Definitely meeting other parents who've gone through exactly the same as us. So losing a child over one. I went to a conference in America run by the SCDC Foundation recently, and they ran a scientific day, a medical conference, and a family day. I've never been in a room with 100 parents who've lost a child, and the energy changed. It's not that it was really depressing, it was just surreal in the fact that we'd all gone through this horrendous, life-changing thing, and it suddenly became very emotional. We all had these little tea lights, and we'd all designed our own votive tea light, and we walked to the front and said our child's name, and it had been a really sort of happy, joyous occasion beforehand, and then you saw these parents coming back and in floods of tears, and it just the atmosphere. I don't think I'll ever be, hopefully never be, in a room with 100 parents who've all lost a child, but it just goes to show we all had little badges of our child on us, and people will come up and say, "You're Rex's mummy." And, you know, I haven't been called Rex's mummy for 2 years, and that is so special that, you know, you're not Camilla, you're Rex's mummy. And same, I can recognise their child, and their life lives on through what you're doing, I suppose. And, you know, you've got those friends across the whole world, some from Australia, America, Canada, Europe. It's incredible, the network now. So we're stronger together.
Through losing, I had 3 losses myself. I lost twin boys, Harrison and Jake, in October 2017, and then I lost another son, Zach, in August 2018. And at the time, really struggled for support, really. I saw him across on Instagram, there was a Sounds United team set. Didn't know anything about them, but then read a bit more and found out it's because they've been through similar circumstances to myself, bereaved dads. And I'd never heard of anything about it, and I love playing football, and I was in touch with them straight away. But it turns out they're in Northampton, and there was nothing like it anywhere nearby. We come to the conclusion, it was, why don't we try and set up Sounds United in Kent? And off the back of that, we set up some social media pages. We set up shout out to dads across as many media channels as we could get, and we just made a decision 2019 January we would meet up at a football place, a football centre in Maidstone, and 10 dads turned up, and it kind of snowballed from there really. People talked about it more, people spread the word, other people heard about us and recommended other dads to come down and see us, and we've grown across the couple of years we've been going now, and I think we've supported over 50 dads in Kent, and yeah, it's you know, the new home from home. Yeah.
It's time now to present the Mental Health Award, and to do so, someone who's experienced firsthand how devastating it can be when someone's mental health deteriorates, Christine Flack. As I'm sure you all know, Christine's daughter Caroline tragically took her own life last year, and tonight this award is being given in her memory.
It doesn't matter what life you're in, you know, anybody can be affected. My Carrot, she was a really happy child. She was a strong personality. She worked hard and she knew the job she wanted to do, and she loved every single minute of it. In front of the camera, I think she came alive, but at home, she always had doubts. She'd only need one bad comment and it would hurt, and then she'd say, oh, I'm not going to take any notice, but she did, and you know she did. Even sometimes when she was on TV, I could think, well, she's not right. But when she was in a good frame of mind, she'd talk about it. But when she was in a bad frame of mind, you couldn't talk to her. So that was the frightening thing. When she actually took her own life at that particular time, she was so down. Kerry is one of thousands of people that have taken their own life. What we can do is put the message over that there's nothing to be ashamed of. We must keep talking about it and keep it to the forefront of people's thoughts. I'm really pleased that I can give this award in Carrie's name. I think she would have been delighted.
Christine is here tonight to present the Mental Health Award, and with her TV presenter and author of bestselling book Grow, about her struggles with mental health, Frankie Bridge.
We're here tonight to talk about mental health and how when tragedy strikes, we need to talk and gather together to help one another so that nobody needs to suffer alone. It's incredible really, but something as simple as just talking can be so powerful, but also at times so difficult to do. That's why having somewhere to go to where you can meet and talk to other people going through similar things is so important. Sometimes though, there just isn't anywhere to go. So what do? Well, if you're the winner of this award, you take the matter into your own hands. Take a look.
You and my son, he was just full of fun, everything about him from a very young age. He was just such a lovely character, just gorgeous. But obviously I would say that I'm his mum. The last time I saw him, we hugged and he told me he loved me. I told him I loved the bones of him. Yeah. My heart broke. Grief can affect mental health quite immensely. I remember being stuck on the sofa in a daze, I think, questioning, going over and over and over things, and, you know, why did it happen? It was a very lonely place, but that's when I found the Good Grief Trust. Do you know what, why don't I do that? Instead of sitting here waiting for someone else to help me, I can do this. Got like a little memory corner for Ewan as well, so I've got a lovely cherry blossom tree.
It's a dark and lonely place when someone's died, and speaking with people who have gone through the same thing that you have, emotionally, it does you so much good.
Yes, we cry, but we also laugh a lot. It's an opportunity to grieve in a good, healthy way. Charmaine, putting aside her own grief, takes bravery and a deep sense of caring for others. No matter where I am or what I'm doing, Ewan is always there, you know. But I've found a way to give not only myself hope, but to give others hope that you can move forward.
The winner of the Mental Health Award in memory of my daughter Kelly is Charmaine George. And I'd just like to say how she did what she did. Because it's some mornings it's just hard to get up and carry on, but to do what she did is wonderful. And she deserves this.
If it wasn't for Linda at the Good Grief Trust being my inspiration, I don't know where I would be right now. And being part of the Good Grief Trust has honestly saved my life, I know that. And many people in grief, depending on how they lose someone, they find it hard at times to see a way forward. And knowing that I have found a way forward and I've given somebody else, maybe 1, 2, 3, even more than that, some hope, then this award is worth it, and it's for you and it's for Libby. So thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, my name's Morrison. I lost my dad when I was 15 in 2013. He was the life and soul of the party. He was a really, really great man. He had, you can probably guess what it was, it's very common, but he had cancer, a very a rare form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was a real rock in our family. Everybody liked him and knew him. He loved a great gossip. He was just great fun, really. So obviously it was a real tragedy when we lost him. But coming up to 4 years now and starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The days aren't as dark, and you know, we're really seeing some progress in our family. We're starting to rebuild ourselves back up. So that's really great. So he was diagnosed in 2003 when I was 6 years old. So he was ill for the majority of my childhood. I don't know, it kind of when you look back, it didn't seem abnormal that we spent most of our weekends in hospital. It was just, that was our life, you know, when you've got nothing else to compare it to, that's just normal. And he put on a very brave front for us, so me and my brother were very sheltered from what was actually going on. We knew he was unwell, but we didn't know that death was not imminent, but a possibility. But he, yeah, I mean, he was ill, yeah, like I said, he was ill for a lot of my childhood, but it didn't stop us doing anything. We still went on family holidays and did lots of things together. We were a very, very close family, still are. He actually, so he had a stem cell transplant, which was by a donor, by my uncle. And it means that your immune system gets very, very weak. It's almost non-existent. And he came back from the transplant, all the doctors had said it couldn't have gone any better. And we were like, yes, get in, like this could be it, this could be us done. And he then started to deteriorate quite rapidly, and we took him to hospital. Me and my brother didn't go to that. My mum took him because it was obviously quite an emergency situation. And then he ended up staying for a couple of days, and he just got worse and worse. He got taken to intensive care, and I didn't actually see him before he died. So when we said goodbye 3 days before, that was it. That I was given the chance to go into the hospital, but I didn't want to remember him that way. I wanted, you know what I mean. I didn't want to see him in such a fragile state, because he'd always been so strong and so brave. And I think I probably would have seen the weaker side of him, like the real weak side of him. And I didn't really want to remember that. And I remember I stayed in my mum's bed the night before, because, you know, everything was just turmoil. And she got a phone call at about, I want to say like 5 o'clock in the morning, and the doctor just said, I think I remember the words, he's deteriorating. And my mum just, you know, when you think everything's all right if you look at your parents and they're still okay, and I looked at my mum and she wasn't, and that's when you're like, oh, okay, maybe something was wrong here. All the family had come down because they realised that the situation was actually quite bad. So my mum, I think, my dad's parents, and even my mum's parents, I think, I can't, you know, it's all becomes a blur, to be honest. They all rushed to the hospital, and yeah, me and my brother were left with my grandparents. So my mum rushed off, I think, with my dad's parents, and my mum's grandparents stayed with us. And I mean, God, that morning was awful, just waiting for a phone call, all this stuff of no news is good news, and nothing. And then we heard a knock on the front door, and my mum comes in, and me and my brother are in the lounge, and she just walks in, she just goes, I need to tell you something. And that's when you know your heart sinks, everything drops. And I can't even remember, she just said, I think Dad's died, but I don't think she could get the words out or something. And I just remember staring into the distance. I had no emotion, no nothing, I just stared, because it was like, what, you're joking, right? No, you mean the last time I saw him was 3 days ago, and that's it, that's it for a lifetime, that's that done. And yeah, just, you know, you almost rock yourself, because you're like, this can't be happening, this isn't real. And then you look around and your family's all crying, and you're like, oh my goodness, this. When they say, you know, who hits the fan, that's really what had happened. And you just look around and go, oh my goodness. And then I think after that it's just tears and tears and tears. I think we cried for about 7 days solid. It was, well, I mean, there's no other way of describing it other than horrible. I mean, it just absolutely, I think, well, when they say the worst day of your life, I think that day will always come to mind. Nothing can quite match that day. But yeah, so that happened in the morning, and yeah, all the family came over, and it was from then on, I think a lot of it is a blur until about 6 months later, and I can't place certain things, and I think because you kind of shut down a little bit, your brain can't compute.
Grief touches us all, but it can also make us feel very lonely. So creating small connections is so important. We can do this by stopping for a chat, checking in on a neighbour, putting the kettle on. No matter how small these everyday gestures, they can fill us with so much warmth. We at the Good Grief Trust would adore you if you could help us spread some warmth, for National Grief Awareness Week by lighting a candle at 6 p.m. on the 8th of December to show your support to make everyone know that they do not have to grieve alone.
Our little umbrella is a symbol of help and hope. Wear a pin to show the bereaved they are not alone and let them know there are hundreds of specialist charities offering tailored support from day one. Order via the link www.thegoodgrieftrust.org/goodgriefshop.
I think the Good Grief Trust is filling a real gap in provision because people don't know where to turn. And everything seems to be in different categories. And it's so good to have an umbrella place where people who've lost someone and those working with bereaved people can actually have a look and see what the choice is. I think it's really crucial.
So in 2012, my youngest son, George, who was 1 at the time, passed away very suddenly. He was playing at home on the rug of the playroom, and he suddenly had a fit out of the blue. So we called an ambulance. The ambulance came and rushed him to our local A&E department, where within 2 hours he passed away. We left the hospital, and for the following days we heard from nobody. We were just abandoned basically as a family, and when you lose a child, when you lose anyone, suddenly and traumatically out of the blue, to then be left alone to try and deal with it just was completely baffling.
Got a call from a mutual friend of mine and Rose, and it was kind of unusual for me to get a call from her because actually she was more Rose's friend than my friend at the time, but I kind of thought, okay. So I answered the phone and she told me that Rose had committed suicide. I remember just being in complete shock and just, not believing. And I remember my stomach just feeling like I'd been kicked. But actually in hindsight, I think perhaps it would have been good to talk to somebody who's completely impartial.
I've been a counsellor for the past 8 years involved with end-of-life care, and in my capacity I've seen many families at the worst point of their lives in some cases when they're about to lose a loved one. And when that point actually comes, that's just the point where the families most need help and support in knowing where to go, who to turn to, what's available. And there is nothing out there for them. You may get lucky, you may get a good GP, you may get a good bereavement service, you may not. And for those people that don't get that, there is nowhere for them to go. They don't know where to turn. I think the thing that is most astonishing is that there is no joined up service, and I find that bewildering and astonishing that until now there has not been anything.
Thankfully, there is a way forward if you're supported properly, which is exactly the key point. I don't want anyone to leave a hospital or a hospice or to have the police knock on the door with a sudden death. And not to have that information that is out there. It is there for them, giving them the right information, targeted information, by going onto the website very, very quickly. Then they can find their regional support or national support, and hopefully they'll find friendships, and then they won't feel so isolated.
I think we are in fantastic childish denial about the fact that we're all heading the same way. We are all going to die. There is nothing morbid about talking about death. I think we have to try and learn to talk about the end of life in the same way as we talk about the beginning of life.
It's important as well across the country that bereavement services come together, because there's actually quite a lot out there, but a lot of people don't know they exist, and there's no point reinventing the wheel, and it's important that charities come together to offer these families the support that, like I said, that they really do deserve.
When you're in a crisis, you need to be able to go to one place and get all the information you need. And that's why the Good Grief Trust is so needed and will no doubt be hugely used. To have all those services under one umbrella is an absolute essential.
This is a small card, but it can make a huge difference to the lives of millions of people who have lost someone close. We need to get this card into the hands of every person who is bereaved so they get signposted to the website via every frontline organisation. But we need your help and we need your funds. Thank you.
So 2015, me and my partner suffered the tragic loss of my boy Oscar. We were good for about 26 weeks and things took a bit of a turn for the worse, and you know, I'm here with my brothers now. You know, it's the exclusive club that no one wants to be a part of, but you know, we're here and you know, the guys are great and I really enjoy being about the team. I feel proud wearing the Good Grief Trust t-shirt. You know, Sands may have been the charity that helped me out when I needed it the most, but to know that there's a charity like yourselves around, you know, that are open for other people going through all sorts of forms of grief, you know, I'm proud to be wearing the top and representing all the charities about. I feel like for me, grief is a big circle, and you're in that middle circle and grief is floating around you, and every so often it touches you and you have real bad days. You know, I've been quite fortunate that the support network I've got around me, my grief has become easier to deal with. You know, we get good days, bad days, but overall I think the support that I get is brilliant.
Getting that phone call is the weirdest thing in the world, and you can't ever explain it or prepare yourself for it, and you never think it's going to happen to you. You never think you're going to be that person that has to be the girl with the dead brother, I guess. The shock that came with finding out that he died, your brain kind of shuts off to protect you, and it's until you come back and look at these photographs that you start to remember things again, because I think your brain's trying to rewire for you to go, okay, that person's not here anymore. I mean, I've got books and books of photos, and I've always thought, oh my goodness, if this house catches fire, I'm going to lose so much stuff. But then that makes it more special and more precious, I guess. My brother's name was Billy. He's 20 years old when he died. He finally decided to go travelling with a group of friends, and he was out in Thailand for 4 days before he had a freak motorbike accident and passed away. People used to fall in love with him from all walks of life. Children, without a doubt, old people used to love him, and in the end he ended up being an emergency care assistant and taking dementia patients to dialysis, and he used to love it. I think because he could wind them up and they definitely wouldn't remember the next day what he'd said to them. But he just gave off this energy like fireworks all the time, and knowing how much of a flirt he used to be and a cheeky chappy, I think he probably made them feel young again. So nice to be surrounded by trees. Apparently they stop your stress by 50%, so going to sit in a woods is quite a good plan. A lot of people can't talk to me and can't mention it because they're so afraid of grieving and so afraid to be upset and to feel that loss. But I think that loss is just the other side of the coin, which is love, and you've got to understand that they're one and the same thing and you can't have one without the other. But I fucking miss him. Yeah. I guess it's strange because you look at photographs and that's a moment in time that you're never going to get back. Everything that you haven't got a picture of, you panic that you're going to forget and that it's going to get written over and all these new memories will come in because you keep living your life and there won't be enough room for the old ones. And I guess I'm scared that I'm going to filter them out and forget. And that's why I've printed off so many of them, because I need something physical. We're not going to have a funeral. Billy would have hated that. So we're having a festival. We've got about 800 people coming at the moment to our garden to celebrate my brother's life through music and dancing and just being with people and really celebrating and being happy, because I feel so damn privileged to have been his sister in this life. There's always hope. I think when you lose someone, you've just got to dig a little deeper to find it.
Amazingly, last year I got the opportunity to be a part of Professor Green's music video for Photographs. Now, doing this has changed my life. It has given me the confidence to stand up here and talk to you guys. It has given me the confidence and strength to tell others what it's like to grieve and what it's like to tell people about those that you have lost. So take your photographs and get your phones out for 5 minutes as I introduce to you Professor
I was just a dance going through all corners. When you ain't many of them, you're many of them. 3 or 4 of them, I wish you weren't more of them. Just wish there were more. I'm not afraid. You can read all about it. Read all about it.
I think that the Rio Ferdinand programme showed that recently, that he particularly wasn't coping with his grief even after about 2 years, and then he met with Benjamin Brooke Duttons, who, funnily enough, actually worked with my wife many years ago, and he actually came to Gendre's funeral. And he's been very good about talking about grief from a kind of male perspective, and as a young father as well, and getting groups of men together. And interestingly, there's a dad at the school who recently lost his wife. He's got 4 children, including one, I think, who's literally about 18 months old or something. And I've got in contact with him and through mutual friends or whatever. But he kind of acknowledged that and said, yes, let's get together, but has never actually committed to a particular time or a date. And I'm not there to, he'll come to me in his own time and in his own way. But yeah, I think men, to a degree, will be less open about their emotions. I've always been pretty much in touch with my feminine side, if I'm really honest. But a lot of men aren't. It was different. I had stopped working for the 2 years that Gendre was ill, so I'd been at home. I'd got into the family routine. I was the primary carer. I was the primary parent. But I suspect that for some men, they will probably have carried on working, and then suddenly they will be faced with a situation where that's it. Their wife is gone, and now they've got their children, and they're going to have to think: can I continue to work, or how do I juggle that? And men will be very much about the provision. Men are like that. We provide for our families. We put food on the table. We pay for the holidays. We buy the new sofa, or all those kind of things. And sometimes they can lose touch with the fact that actually you don't need to worry about the new sofa, because if you sit with your kids on the old sofa watching a film, that means as much to them as sitting on a new sofa not watching the film. And so I think that men, I certainly gone through that journey of moving from you know, the provider to being the emotional support, which is what my wife was to the children. I don't think I was a bad father when she was alive, but you know, it's a very different kettle of fish. So I think that men, yeah, it's probably not fair to generalise, but in my experiences of being a widower for the last 3.5 years, I would say that, you know, the people I've met, it's 80-90% almost women versus men. Not in every situation, but a lot. And I think that must say something about the way that men deal with grief, apart from the statistics that perhaps more men die than women. But I mean, I think that aside, I think that men are very social creatures. They'll get together in the pub, they'll go and play golf, they'll go and watch football matches, they do all that kind of thing. But actually, perhaps sitting down and talking about their emotions still, for men, is something that comes less easily than it does to women. Yeah, I think you know, men, as I said, men will come together, right, in very male, you know, situations. I mean, I've been going to football for 40 years, or I said, you know, men will engage in plenty of activities. But equally, men can go and spend a lot of time with their male friends and not actually really scratch beneath the surface of anything. So very often my wife would say, when I got out and met sort of my closest friends, you know, for an entire weekend of golf, they would say, "So how is Steve's wife and the children?" I go, "I don't know, actually, we didn't talk about that." And she'd go, "Well, what did you talk about for 48 hours? I go, "I don't really remember, actually. Yeah, we just had a good time." And so that's, you know, men can be more just, you know, at the surface. It depends, of course, on the friendship groups and the bonds and the trust and whatever. And I'm lucky. I've got 3 or 4 friends who I can be, you know, very, very open and honest with. But you know, I wouldn't necessarily see them all the time. But I think that, you know, to some degree, I don't know if men sitting in kind of cold, sterile meeting rooms is going to necessarily bring out the best of them per se. I think if you go back to the Rio Ferdinand programme, he sat in, you know, somebody's kitchen and they're having a coffee and they're, you know, having a natter. You know what I mean? I think for men, there's going to be something about the environment. But actually, what would be good is if there is a kind of mediator. I think that men, 2 things could happen. All the men could go out together and have a really nice time, and that's just a distraction. And for an hour or two, do you know what? Sometimes that's what you need. You don't actually want to go out and talk about the pain that you're going through. You want to go out, go to the pub, watch the football, talk football, and talk drivel, and then go home, because it's just been 2 hours of being distracted. But then there's that balance between, well, if you keep doing that and you're actually talking about anything, then you're not really dealing with it, you're just putting it to one side. So what I could see, I mean, whether it's practical or not, is this kind of like an army of kind of sort of mediators who can get these groups of men who are going to have a good time, they're going to the pub, but can then just bring into the conversation, you know, so how are you doing, guys? You know, what are you going through? You know, how are you feeling? You know, it needs a bit more organisation, a bit more structure. I think to get men's creative juices going. I think once they do, then I think they will talk. But if you leave them to their own devices, it will just be a diversionary evening, which, as I said, is fine up to a point. But it's no different from if you're kind of in a 1,000,001 off-site meetings at work. You know, if there isn't somebody bringing it all together, driving it, steering it, and then people could be amazed, and then something comes out of it really powerful and really strong, and everybody leaves, you know, having got an amazing amount out of that experience. As I said, you don't want to be doing that all the time, and I think that they'll, you know, you've got to let men come and go into that as they so choose.
Hello, I'm Hilary Barker from the middle of Scotland, and I'm absolutely delighted to be involved with helping the Good Grief Trust. The reason for my enthusiasm is that I lost my husband very suddenly nearly 5 years ago, and at that time I realised there was no support really for anyone in my situation, and it was for not till several months later that I came across the Good Grief Trust and volunteered. I decided that one of the things I really wanted to do was to try and help other people who found themselves in the same sort of situation as I did. And I think that the work of the Trust is absolutely essential, and we ought to raise awareness of what it can do and bring it to the attention of as many people as possible. So hello to everyone. Really nice to meet you, I hope, soon. So this is hello and goodbye from Scotland.
The first Christmas, we came to the Christmas service, and we've been to
several events
here.
here.
Father's Day service.
We kind of felt part of a community, if you like. It's been really special, hasn't it?
Yeah, it
still
has.
is really special in terms of the events that are laid on, because you're put together. I mean, it's very emotional. It's a very private thing. But you're suddenly in a room or a gathering full of people who are going through exactly the same sets of emotions. And there's a shared sense there, isn't there? Which has been brilliantly done.
Any event you come to, you talk to people, everyone's like so lovely, and everyone feels like they're coming from the same. It's just such. There seems to be such love and care, and everyone understands we've all been through the same experience, and so.
But the events as well, they're kind of they're joyous, aren't they? I mean, you massive respect. We understand that, but people do come along, and they're happy being there, aren't they?
Grief is an absolute unique, really, really individual experience, and there isn't one single person out there that knows how you feel. Not one person. I don't care who they are, what expert they are, nobody knows how you're feeling out there. But there are lots of people who want to hold your hand and lead you by an invisible hand, and actually just knowing that you're not on your own is really, really important. We can't fix you. We don't actually know how you feel, but you're not on your own because there's lots of support out there. But just reach out and just grab us by that hand.
After the loss of my son last year, I found that I needed some extra support rather than counselling or anything rigid. And so I went online and I found the Good Grief Trust, and they were advertising for volunteers to set up pop-up grief cafes, and I just thought that'd be perfect. It's really emotional, if I'm honest, because at the end of the day, this has all happened because my son died. So there will always be the sadness for me, but you have to in life look at the positive in things, and this is a massive positive, that people aren't going to be alone in their grief, and if I could do that for them, then that's what I'm giving back.
I nominated Charmaine for this award because she's an incredibly special person. She has brought her community together in Cornwall by opening one of our pop-up cafes down there, and that's proved a lifeline for her. But what she's done is she's connected people, and she's created really special new friendships in that area, and that has been incredibly important to so many people.
Hello, I'm Catherine Mannix, and I'm trying to encourage all of us to step up into tender conversations, particularly those moments when perhaps we're a little bit daunted because we see somebody who we know is grieving and we're not quite sure what to say. National Grief Awareness Week starts next Thursday, and I'm inviting you all to join us in that campaign to relieve the loneliness of grief. For example, when we see a friend or neighbour who we know to be grieving, we can offer to stop for a chat. This year's theme for the week is Spread Some Warmth. And what we'd like people to do is to make themselves available in a gentle, offering way, simply to be a listening ear. We don't have to sit and make intense conversation. We can do normal things. Perhaps going for a walk and chatting as we walk, which reduces that nervous eye contact thing that we all worry about. It's really important that we help people to feel relaxed and to talk about what they want to talk about and own the space that we're in. So check in on your neighbours, be sensitive to what they need, whether it's privacy or whether it's company. And remember that by putting the kettle on, making people welcome, we can share a space that combats loneliness and helps people to process their grief. National Grief Awareness Week, supported by the Good Grief Trust, runs from the 2nd of December to the 8th of December. Please help us to spread the warmth.
Grief touches us all, but it can also make us feel very lonely. So creating small connections is so important. We can all do this by stopping for a chat, checking in on our neighbour, or just putting the kettle on. No matter how small these everyday gestures, they can fill us with warmth. We at the Good Grief Trust would adore you if you could help us spread some warmth for National Grief Awareness Week by lighting a candle at 6 p.m. on the 8th of December to show your support and make everyone know that they do not have to grieve alone.
I am very, very passionate about kind language when we're talking at end of life and when somebody has died. My best friend took her own life. She was 47 on 17th of February 2019. And I remember her family saying to me, you know, that they said they like to view the body. And when they told me that, my heart just sank. And it's about visiting the person to say goodbye and making it as kind. It's an awful thing that's happening, but we can help to make it the most kind thing. We can't take away the pain, but we can be so kind. So I'm very passionate about kind language. I don't like the term committed suicide. It should be took their own life, bereaved by suicide. That's my personal opinion. Very outdated term. Visit, say goodbye to the person. We don't view the person, they are our loved one. We say goodbye. And important conversations, not difficult. Because if you tell medical staff they need to have a difficult conversation with a family member, it'll be put down the list. It's an important conversation that needs to be had now. It's a priority. So I would love to work with many of you and improve communication. It's all about kindness, empathy, compassion and dignity. And we have one chance to get it right. And you know what, we try our best, but when we don't get it right, we need to listen to families and we need to take on board and learn lessons from not getting it right. So here at Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital, I've been working with Linda now for almost a year. I became an ambassador in November last year, and we started putting in the Good Grief cards into our packs that go out to bereaved families, or if they're actually in the hospital when their loved one dies, which happens very frequently, then we would give them a swan bag with useful information, signposting to the Good Grief Trust, and the really useful signposting and what to do next booklet from the hospital as well. We've also got pen, paper, tissues, the all-important tissues, because giving people permission to cry is so important. And a little jewellery bag as well, to put jewellery and give it back, gift it back to the families in a jewellery bag, because it deserves that kindness, doesn't it? Not just hand it over in someone's hand. It's precious, that jewellery, that ring, that necklace, or a hair lock. Some people like to have a hair lock. So we've been putting this that doubles up as a condolence card. It's a lovely card. And then inside there's a little credit card with information and the Good Grief Trust's details. Patients' relatives are saying that they really appreciate it. That's the feedback we're getting. The staff, myself and the team I work with, really feel it helps us, because as you can imagine, in a busy general hospital, we so want to deliver brilliant end-of-life care. We also want to ring up people the following week to see how they're doing, and we just don't have capacity of that, because we're having to move on to looking after, you know, end-of-life care patients. I do my best trying to ring relatives up when I can, and the bereavement team ring relatives up to talk through next steps and signpost as well, so we make sure there's a follow-up. But I try my best, if I've had a lot to do with families, to give them a call and just see how they're doing. And they're telling me that having this card in the pack shows we care, and it's in the house. They don't have to navigate through a complicated system, services to find the service that they need. They've got it to actually, you know, pick up and make that call. And it's about being brave, isn't it, to make that call. And if somebody, you know, if you're in a really privileged position that somebody shares with you that they want help, then it's us as professionals that we really need to encourage them to get the help they need. But listening with that empathy and fascination, and not being preoccupied by something else. It's real listening, not waiting to speak. It's that skill, isn't it, that you're listening and you want to support and signpost people at the hardest of time. And I am in an absolutely privileged position. I think I have the best job in the world, which people think I'm a bit strange, because I love my role, but it's about making the best of an awful situation. And I do my best to do that. And this trust doesn't always get it right, but when we don't get it right, we need to listen. And kind language is so, so important. So we will continue to give these out to every bereaved relative, friend, whoever's important to that person. And we will be doing lots for National Grief Awareness Week. I would love to work with many of you, like all of you. I'm a volunteer, do this in my own time. I'll work extra tonight to make sure that I've got this in today. But I will do anything I can just to help one family. If they don't have to go through, or make it easier for them, then I have done my work. But we'll be lighting up Sir Captain Tom Moore's garden here at Telford Hospital, and at Shrewsbury we'll be doing the statue, the NHS 70 statue. And I, as Linda knows, I'm a bit of a person that just keeps on asking people, so I'm asking the I'm Celebrity Castle and all sorts of other people, please light it up in orange for National Grief Awareness Week. But thank you, and thank you for sharing your stories, because really emotional, but we as professionals need to hear them to improve the care that we deliver. So thank you.
Hello, I wanted to share with you my personal story of grief. Grief first came to me as a young woman when my mother tragically became ill, and she was ill for such a long period of time that the grief I felt at her loss was stretched out over many years with an agonising sense of grief that slowly she left us. She was afflicted by dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all mixed up together. So over a long period of time, I gradually lost a little bit more of her every single day. And as a young woman, that loss, it still lives with me today. There were so many milestones that I came upon and she wasn't there. But I felt so lucky, so very lucky, that all the years that I had shared with her, she was a wonderful, kind, just simply fantastic mother. So I felt that I had no right to wallow in my grief. But my grief also got swallowed up in life, and life working, life as a wife, a business leader and a mother, all of those things where the grief and the loss of her never really had time to air itself. And all these years later, of course, that grief still wells to the surface sometimes. And then, of course, latterly, having had my father live with us since he was 87, he had become a profound sense of one of our family, one of the five, not the visited occasionally, but here every single day from dawn until dusk, a needed and wanted part of our family. And so when he died, we did recognise, and I genuinely recognised, the feeling of loss that the world would have, and that I very much wanted to show my appreciation and my family's appreciation for the world's loss. But it didn't detract from the fact that there was raw loss and grief, and that raw loss and grief can be incredibly isolating. We are not very well equipped to deal with asking people about their loss. Somehow it feels that after the first few days of the empathy and sympathy that we don't know what to say to people. And I've never blamed anyone for not asking me or not understanding, because the truth is, until you have gone through such grief and such loss, it's difficult to truly appreciate how someone else can feel. So I never ever want anyone else to feel responsible for my grief. But what I hope to be able to do is talk about it, to talk about loss and grief, and to share our stories and to support each other, and to say very clearly that there should be no embarrassment, no shame, no worry about talking about how we feel, about the sense of profound loss that sometimes it can just come from nowhere. And I'm sure, like me, I can be driving, listening to a song, walking down the street, seeing somebody, and the loss just comes from nowhere, out of nowhere. But we must allow ourselves to feel that way, and to know that that's part of the healing process. At least loss and how we deal with it is very individual, and there is no set way to deal with it. But at least let's allow ourselves the kindness and humanitarian connection of understanding how it feels where we can, and for empathising and sympathising with those who have gone through loss and feel loss, but not having any expectation that anyone must know how we feel. We need to also make it easier for people to come in and ask us. So I hope that what I can give you genuinely is hope. My father left an incredible lasting legacy of hope for the world, and it is our responsibility to ensure that that legacy of hope lives on in all of us.